What will be the solution to bring harmony regardless of race, religion, and ethnicity? Particularly, I am referring to Rakhine and Rohingya. You know, Jamadane Patelu solution, Kanaka Piobari. Jamaro ha, let we judge a patient nine me, Piathanario, but my patient. The Lumioye Bada ye, Petipecamia, Lumioye Bada ye, Piathanamia, so Nijinaje, patient night ham hopeful. But so Eddie Haria, ye she map, ye bound to Romiamia, my pitla, Piathanari pity. Diro, Chechin Lange. Bello Nine, Pario patient I miss Rojma, Chimpia gave me baby. Era Rojma Piora ha, Ubri Somoyene sign. Ubri Somoyes Raha, Napeshivari. The Kua Ubri Sura Palepon, Ubri Rema Papale, Nabro di Ubri, the Gebe, Tidi Yao Yao, or Lina on look, the Turi did Ubri, Tia on look, Long Nine, Nilani, Shia Lasra, Era Ujma. A late happy Biora ha, da Chechen Lang and Lungne Kisam Huluba. Ubamas is in Nanganda Ubri. Jabari and Nanganda Ubris Rabelule. The Nanga Uba Ubri, ma ba cellete, badale. The cellete ha, the gay Gaba San Miela. Nangadaga San Miela, Tau Jamaru Chiame. Tibiro, Dilo San Mi solution, the Ubri go Tia on low, long nine and Neta, Jamaru Nangama Shiela, Bioa Messini, Ubri Somoy. Da Chechen Lang and Lungne Makisa, not the Kuale, Jamaru ye, the and now by Mabano, and now by Nezama solution. Look at your ha, Simekame penny. Era Jamne, or Piasanari Pitla, who the Penanga, Leda, Donanga, Ludim Hopu, Dibe, Bamapia, the Yamananga, Ludim Yamananga, Leda, Donanga, Ludim Hopu, Hobeka Kula, Rasipiro, Eddie Low, Suswajet, Penanga, ha, Simekame, the Nezako Piajo Huja, the Niapin, Jomis, and Dale Ubri Sumo Yamashida Bono, Nabro, Nezama, Sound, Soya Tana, the La Bella you, Gaysane, McKinney Harry, and Simon. And let literature Pianario, Chmaro, literature, Amazon Piame. O Bada Mature, Lumia, Lumia, Ajama, a mere Matulo, but Tibeka Pietari goes, Jaro, Dihari Piele Duan, Alan Wine Loama, Dara Nijina Jim Pianang. Nachmaro literature Jane, Minayame. Bello Lomale, Dilo Bada Ja, la Lumioja Achama, the Chua, Biore, oh, Pielemu Pipusra, Mapinam, Dama Hopu, Gaba, you, Gilaiba, Pielemu Yare Niari Shibari, Erochmaru Anibiro, the Gaba Lunga Nibiro, Tingaza di Juame, Pielemu Ya on Bellu Niri ne Lumale, Bellu Niri ne Jozamale, the Chaniama, Simpi Niria, Tmaru Nangama, a Simpi Jema, Simpima, that Tmaru thin you do ame, Daro Nijina Jim, Pishino Miao, Tmaru literature Jibiro, a Mianzon, the Gire Kesa, Tetuan, Tere Kesa, Papa, Babia, Down, Subiro Roach, Maru Sapiro Lua Melo, Matimai.
Aung San Suu Kyi, real expectation on you particularly to resolve this issue of citizenship for a minority like the Rohingyas?
Well, at the moment, nobody seems to be very satisfied with me because I'm not taking sides. But let's look at it this way. I believe in rule of law. I think that the first necessity is rule of law. In the Rakhine, until people feel safe, until people can be sure that they will not be killed in bed or their houses burned above them, they're not going to talk to each other, and there is not going to be any kind of genuine reconciliation. So because I believe in rule of law, first of all, I believe that everybody must be entitled to security under the present administration, and that the administration must do everything possible to ensure the security of all peoples in our country, whatever their race, whatever their religion. And secondly, when I say rule of law, it also means the law with regard to citizenship. And that I look at it in two steps. First of all, are all those who are entitled to citizenship under the 1982 law now citizens? Have they been given citizenship in accordance with the 1982 law? That is the first thing we have to look at. And then secondly, we must reassess the 1982 law to see if it is in line with international norms. That is what rule of law means, and it's not an exciting answer that I'm giving you.
Well, people who are now very aware of what is happening with the ethnic minorities in your country.
Well, first of all, as I said, I have not been silent. It's just that they're not hearing what they want to hear from me. But I cannot doctor my answers to please everybody. I have to say what I believe in. And I believe that rule of law is the first step towards any kind of solution to the problem in the Rakhine State and other parts of this country. And of course, that's not an exciting answer. So people would rather think that I was not saying anything than that I was saying something so boring that they'd rather not hear.
My question is, who are the Rohingya in Myanmar, and why are they being persecuted by the government of Myanmar?
I think you should not use emotive words like persecution, because what had happened in the Rakhine was violence, communal violence, and there were crimes committed by both communities. And when you focus on what one community suffers, then you create further hatred. I think we should look at it as coolly as possible. The first thing to do to diffuse the situation there is to think of it from the point of view of rule of law. And this is where your question, who are they, comes in. We have to look at it from the point of view of rule of law in three different ways. First of all, rule of law in the sense of handling crimes as they should be handled. That is to say, when a crime is committed, action must be taken in accordance with the fact that justice must not only be done, but seen to be done. If this had been, if such action had been taken place in the case of the first crime that set off a whole series of communal violence, then I think we would not be in the situation we are today. Now that is the first requirement of rule of law. But rule of law must always be linked to human rights. Everybody's human rights, as I said earlier, must be sacrosanct. And rule of law must protect everybody and their human rights. And then there is rule of law with regard to citizenship. We have citizenship laws in Burma. And everybody in Burma must have the rights of a citizen in line with the citizenship laws. But we should go a step further and examine whether our citizenship laws are in line with international standards. That is the second step. And the third aspect of rule of law, which I think would help the situation, is to make sure that there are no illegal crossings of the border. This has added to the problems. Bangladesh claims that many Muslims come over from Burma and they do not really belong to Bangladesh. And Burma claims that a lot of Muslims who are now in Burma are actually people who have come over illegally from Bangladesh. It is very difficult to prove whether such assertions are right or wrong because the border is so porous and so badly policed. So if we could take simple rule of law steps to contain the situation, then we can go on to the next stage of diffusing the tension and bringing harmony between the two communities. It's not going to be something that you can do overnight. Communal tensions have existed for decades, They erupted recently because of one crime that was committed and not handled properly. It focused on all the problems that had been existing between the communities over the last decades, but it all came to a head. And the reason why I do not want to use accusative words is because I want people to just sit back and think of ways of resolving the problems than of accusing. Accusations do not always diffuse problems. They do not always resolve problems. Sometimes the proper accusations should be made, but they should only be made after due examination of the evidence. What is important is that the government must take responsibility for any violence that takes place in the country. Anything that happens that is contrary to the laws of the land. As I said earlier, I do not think that the government has taken enough responsibility with regard to that. Behind all these communal tensions are great fears and hatred. And to remove these, the government must create an atmosphere of security. If people do not feel secure, you will not be able to make them let go of their hatred and their fear. So I want our people to live in peace. We have not forgotten, I have not forgotten, certainly, that we achieved our independence in 1948 through reconciliation between different ethnic nationalities, with the involvement of different religious groups, with the involvement of different political organizations. It was through national solidarity that we achieved our independence. And I believe that it is only through national solidarity that we will be able to achieve true democracy for our country. So Australia and the rest of the world must try to help us to achieve this reconciliation. They must also remind the present government that it is responsible for peace and rule of law in our country. If they want us to be responsible, they'd better make us government.